Hi everyone, it's Lynn D&L Create, and for today's project I started by taking 3 paddle ball games that I got from Dollar General, cutting the ball off, and then rounding off the top of them. I rounded off one of them and then I used that as my template to round off the second one. The next thing I did was I overlapped them just a little bit, and then I flipped it over and I traced where it overlapped, and then I cut that piece off. And then I put those 2 pieces aside for now, and I took one of the wall decals from Dollar Tree, and I placed the 3rd paddle on top of it. I tried to center it as best as I could, and then I traced that, and I cut that out. And then I just peeled the backing off of it and I attached it to the paddle. And once I had it on there, I just kind of smoothed it out with my hands to make sure it was fully adhered. Next, I put the other 2 pieces next to each other and I put the 3rd paddle right in the middle and I centered it best I could because you know I eyeball everything, and I traced around it. And then I took the remaining piece of the wall tile and I covered that area that I traced out. And then I cut the excess off. Now, you could just use a second tile and cover the entire piece so you wouldn't have to trace that center paddle. But I wanted to get this whole project done with just 1 tile. So once I had that piece done, I just did the same thing to the other piece. Once I was finished doing that, I just took a piece of fairly coarse sandpaper and I went over the tile on both of the ends and the centerpiece. When I was done doing that, I kind of just put it back together again and I kind of drew an arch across the top to make it even with the other 2 pieces, and then I cut that off. I was going to leave it on and use it as a stem, which you could definitely do, maybe wrap it in twine or rope, but I decided I wanted to use something else for the stem. So I took a cork and I just used a utility knife and I sliced it right in half. And then I used the utility knife to cut one of the corners off, give it more of kind of like an angled look. And then I used a really rough piece of sandpaper because the cork was pretty smooth and I wanted it to have more of a rugged look to it. And once I had that all roughed up, I just dry brushed some antique wax over the top of it. And when that was dry, I went in with kind of a metallic-y rose gold color to kind of match the gold that was coming out in the wall tile. And then I did go in and I gave all of the backs of these pieces 2 coats of chalk paint. And then I went around all of the edges on all 3 pieces. I also went back to the front and I painted a little bit along the edge of that wall tile. I guess I didn't cut them perfectly, so when I laid the center piece on there, I could see a little bit of it. Once everything was dry, I glued it all together. I just used hot glue right around that curved edge, and I just pushed it right up against the other piece, and then glued the 3rd piece right down to the center. And I love the way this is turning out so far. It's got a really vintage look to it. And then I did take a piece of sandpaper again and go over the entire pumpkin. The next thing I did was finish off all of the edges. So I took a very thin, kind of petite strand of beads and I just hot glued them all the way around the inside edge of the pumpkin and the outside edge. And as you can see, these are a light green color, but I wanted them white. So I used some chalk paint and I took the paintbrush and I just kind of dabbed it over the beads to get into the crevices. And once I had the beads painted, I just kind of dry brushed some of that white chalk paint over the whole pumpkin. And I just finished it off by embellishing it with some leaves that I took off of a floral pick. And then once I had those glued on, I glued on the stem. I wrapped some coated wire around a pencil to create the tendrils, and I glued those on. And then I created 2 bows. I used some beige raffia that I just wrapped around my hand a few times. I tied it off in the center, and I glued that under the stem, and then I made a smaller bow with some green raffia the same way, and glued it right on top of the other bow. And then I trimmed up those long tails. And of course I added a button to the bow. And then I took the white chalk paint and I dry brushed over all of it. but I wasn't crazy about how it looked up there by the tendrils. So I just took another of the leaves and I cut a small piece off of it and I glued it right to the front of them. And I think it turned out really pretty. I love the vintage vibe that it's given. And I really hope you like it too. And I hope you give this one a try. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Have a really great day. And we will see you next time. Bye-bye.